Hello, my name is Melissa Dahmer, and I'm a graduate student at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee studying learning and development in the educational psychology department. And I'm really excited to share more about this field of study with you today and talk to you about how to become involved in a graduate program in learning and development and what that looks like. So some of you may be asking, what does it mean to study learning and development? What do you actually study in learning and development programs at the master's and PhD level? So to begin, learning and development is less of its own discipline and more of a combination of psychology disciplines. So you'll be studying typically under the educational psychology umbrella, though you're combining developmental psychology with cognitive psychology as they both apply in learning contexts, particularly in education systems. You may also see this under the titles Learning Sciences and Human Development, Cognition and Development, Learning and Developmental Sciences, and the similar. It seems as though every single institution will have a different title for the same exact field of exploration. 1 million different titles may be an exaggeration, but you catch my drift. So how do you know if you're looking at a learning and development program? You just have to know what department you're looking for and where to look for this type of program to know whether or not you're in the right place. I would encourage you to look first within departments of educational psychology, or more broadly within the institution's School of Education, and then see programs within this department that explore relevant topics to human and learning and development. So again, learning and development typically combines two different psychology disciplines and incorporates them into this one field of study. So developmental psychology is the study of human growth across the lifespan. Then you add that on top of cognitive development and understanding mental processes for how people acquire, process, and store information. And this accumulates into the study of learning and development, which is usually defined as understanding human learning processes, what factors influence these processes, and how these processes evolve over time. So how will you know if this is a field that you would like to pursue for a graduate degree? Some interesting topics include understanding how people learn at different stages of life, how individuals grow intellectually, what factors such as motivation, culture, social interactions, emotional well-being, and cognition will influence learning and development, and how can we ensure we are creating an environment that will facilitate learning at its best for a variety of different developmental stages. Now, if you can answer that last question, you'll win a Nobel Prize. But in any case, this is still something that's studied in learning and development. So if you're interested in exploring these theories and research that address questions similar to the ones I stated, you've come to the right place. Welcome to the study of learning and development. Now, there are quite a few different options for studying learning and development, and it really depends on what you want to do with it. And it also depends on what the different universities you're looking at offer. So typically, I have seen more often than not a Master of Science and a PhD or Doctor of Philosophy route. But you may also encounter Masters of Art and Masters of Education routes as well. So if you're pursuing more of the master's level, it typically takes about 2 to 3 years to complete, plus a master's thesis, a comprehensive exam, or a portfolio, or combinations of multiples of those. Research is traditionally not required at this level, but highly encouraged. As for the PhD, it typically takes 3 to 4 years to complete, so a little bit longer, and you are required to conduct research and use that in a dissertation and defend it. Learning and development, I will note though, in general, is not a program that certifies students to practice psychology in clinical counseling nor school settings. It is really intended for those who want a base knowledge in educational psychology topics, so again, cognition and development, though intend to go into fields that do not require licensure or certification. This can also be a great preparation program if you decide to go back to school at a later date to pursue a PhD in a psychology program. And then you can get licensure through that program if you so desire. Don't worry, I'll cover more about what this degree offers you in terms of career prospects on a later slide. When applying for a graduate program in learning and development, Most traditionally, you will be asked to provide a resume, letters of recommendation, and a transcript. They may or may not ask for an interview with faculty and department chairs, and they may or may not ask you for your GRE scores. Again, this is more at a broad level. It always depends on the program and the unit and the institution that you're applying at, but these tend to be the most common modes for applying for a learning and development program. I will give you more insights into what the programs may not explicitly tell you is important upon applying for the program next. So, some of you may be wondering, well, what kind of undergraduate degree do I need? And am I pursuing the right undergraduate degree if this is what I want to pursue? The answer is there is no right answer. So undergraduates can actually come from any background. Typically, they come from education or psychology programs because that gives you kind of the foundational information that is important for understanding learning and development, though it's not required for acceptance. You can really enter with any background, which is really awesome about learning and development. This won't be on your program's website either, but I would argue that a foundational knowledge of psychology is a prerequisite because students will quickly need to become immersed into theory and be equipped to navigate more challenging research articles without much assistance from your TAs or your professors. It is expected for students to have at least a basic understanding of psychology, even if your background and your undergraduate degree are not in the field of psychology. Also, I will note that most programs, when you start your courses, will not spend much time reviewing these basic terminologies or theories, so please be prepared for this. If you want to touch up on psychology before you enter into a program of learning and development, I highly recommend it if you are not confident or comfortable with some of those early developmental and cognitive theories and concepts. I also recommend that you research your existing faculty's research interests. That's really important, and it really sets the precedent for what your program is going to look like. So say that the institution's faculty research interests are relating to young adult and adolescent development and education, and you're wanting a career in college advising. This is a great sign for you because it improves your chances of engaging in relevant research to your interests, and it improves the likelihood of courses that target this field of interest in more advanced classes. So if you're interested more in child development, looking at the faculty's interests in more adolescent and adult development may not be a good sign for you because then all of the advanced coursework and all of the relevant research opportunities that will be extended to you will not be relevant to your career prospects and your career interests. So that's really something that's important to consider. For PhD, all of the above I would say are important, but also I would say that prior research experience is typically preferred if not required. They really like to have their PhD students come into the program prepared for their dissertation and having the skills and background in order to navigate that process without a whole lot of support. The support's really going to come more from the faculty guiding them and not necessarily educating them on how to run a research project. So highly recommend that you look into that if you are pursuing the PhD program and making sure that you have the right experiences in order to apply. Now we're here to prospective careers. So it depends on the learning and development program that you're in, depends on the direction of the coursework you take within the program, and it, again, depends on the institution, though these are typically the top careers that you will find upon completing a Master's of Science, Master's of Education, Master's of Arts, or Doctor of Philosophy. So the category that says Master's of Science, typically these are the top careers that individuals will pursue following their master's degree. And then on the Doctor of Philosophy, again, typically your top degree prospects, though it depends, again, on your interests and what you've done with your degree in terms of your coursework and research. And that's the beautiful thing about learning and development programs is that the career options are virtually limitless because learning and development happens everywhere. You can really apply a vast amount of learning and development topics into any field: human resources, museums, program evaluation, college student advising, marketing, you name it. And again, these targeted courses that I mentioned in the last slide will help you focus on enhancing knowledge and skills for these more specific career paths. Yet you will also have this base knowledge that will allow you to explore opportunities for different career options because of the broad scope within educational psychology that learning and development programs offer you. Okay, so you noticed, continuing on to your PhD is not really a career path unless you tend to be a career student. But it's really important to note that many graduate students continue on to get their PhD after their learning and development program, and perhaps will stay in learning and development with their PhD, or you have the option to pursue other related degrees like school psychology, school community counseling, curriculum and instruction, administrative leadership, higher education and student affairs, and the list goes on and on and on. Behavior analysis is also a very common PhD to pursue following a learning and development degree. There's just so much you can do with this degree at a master's or a PhD level. So I will reiterate the point I made before, though, that if you are seeking a program where you can become licensed in psychology for an educational setting, I highly recommend that you also look at school counseling or school psychology programs, or community counseling, or school and guidance counseling. These programs will also educate graduate students on educational psychology concepts for the most part, yet you will build licensure into the curriculum and become licensed to work in those very specific fields. Otherwise, again, this is a great foundation if you want to take this as your master's program and then pursue more licensure-focused programs for your PhD. What does it look like to be a graduate student in learning and development? What does the day-to-day life look like? Or what does it look like to go through the entire program? In terms of your courses, you will certainly start off with a human development course. That will be usually your prerequisite for taking any advanced courses. And then you can move on into topics more specific in cognition or social cognition, motivation. You may also have to take a statistical methods class, particularly if you are conducting research to be able to interpret your quantitative findings. Multicultural and diversity-focused courses tend to be a hot topic as well in learning and development. Again, because of the application into the school settings. So you may be taking an urban education class, a class on multicultural student development, or even diversity in the classroom or diversity in learning contexts. Also, you have seen insert age group here development. That's to signify that a lot of programs will offer very targeted developmental courses that focus on specific age groups, like child development, adolescent development, young adult development, emerging adulthood development, older adult development, midlife, the list goes on. So there are a lot of options for developmental courses that are specific to the age group that you're interested in. So if you're seeking an assistantship, there are paid and unpaid opportunities, though the paid are always more attractive, right? And you can get them in research, teaching, or program where you're actually supporting a program at the university and managing support systems on campus. I would definitely look for opportunities with tuition remission. Now, if this term is new for you, tuition remission essentially means that your tuition is either being partially or fully funded on top of a stipend. So if you get a full tuition remission, then you're basically getting paid to go to school, which is pretty sweet. So I definitely would say that if funding is an issue where you would like to have an opportunity to receive some financial assistance and work for it, definitely look for assistantships that offer tuition remission. Otherwise, the partially and unpaid assistantships will not be a hindrance on your CV. They will still be very resumeable and offer you amazing experiences still. Conferences and symposia. At the master's level, they are optional, but you should definitely go still, especially if you are conducting research and you would like to showcase to your peers what you're doing with your research. Then it's a fantastic opportunity to work with your peers and, again, to be able to show what you're contributing to your field. Typically, the PhD students are required to go, but this is, again, a fantastic opportunity for you to show off what you're doing with your dissertation or potential other research projects. If you're concerned about, again, finances, there is usually student discounts offered for conferences that are at the national or regional level, or you can receive grant funding through a student organization or through just basic university applications. On-campus conferences and symposia are fantastic opportunities as well, and they won't cost you as much because you're sticking around campus. And this is also I just really am a fan. There's a lot of learning that goes on at these symposia and conferences, and a lot of networking. It's just an all-around excellent experience in terms of personal development, professional development, and looking to see how you can learn from others in the fields. And that is what I have to share about applying for and studying in a program of learning and development at the graduate level. If you have any questions, feel free to get in touch with me. My contact information is on the slide. And I am to note that there'll be more information to come in spring of 2016. Look out specifically in April for more information about other fields of psychology in which you can pursue a graduate or PhD degree. Thank you so much for listening to the presentation, and I hope you developed an interest in learning and development. Thanks.